The piano is one of the most popular and beloved musical instruments of all time. As most of you are probably aware, the piano is a large keyboard instrument that produces sound when a player presses down the keys, which in turn allows hammers to strike the strings, causing them to vibrate at specific pitches. The history of the piano is long and fascinating, spanning several centuries and involving multiple artists, inventors, and countries. In this video, we will discuss the evolution of this beautiful instrument from its original origins all the way to the present day. Before we dive into this intriguing topic, take a moment to hit subscribe. Remember to turn on your notifications so that you'll be updated anytime a new video is posted. The piano is the most modern and advanced instrument in a long line of keyboard instruments which have been around for quite some time. The earliest versions were pipe organs, which date all the way back to ancient Greece. However, while a pipe organ uses a keyboard, it does not utilize strings to produce sound. Nevertheless, inventors were able to use their knowledge of the pipe organ to develop the first keyboard instruments that involved strings. The first attempts at this occurred as early as the Middle Ages, though there was not true success until the 17th century, when the clavichord and harpsichord became popularized. These instruments are the closest predecessors to the modern piano, though they are still played today in certain settings. The harpsichord produces sound through a mechanism that plucks strings when keys are pressed, while a clavichord, similar to a piano, produces sound through the striking of strings by a small blade. These instruments were very popular during the Baroque era, though they had significant limitations, including a lack of dynamic range and an inability to sustain notes. Thus, it's very difficult to play loudly or expressively. It wasn't until the early 18th century that a new instrument emerged that would revolutionize music forever: the piano. The first pianos were created in the early 1700s by Bartolomeo Cristofori, an Italian instrument maker who worked for the powerful Medici family in Tuscany and specialized in harpsichord. Cristofori's pianos used hammers to strike the strings, creating a fuller, louder, and more expressive sound than the early keyboard instruments. This instrument was still an early form of the piano. However, it was not the same size as the modern piano. It only contained 49 keys and therefore could only play 4 octaves. Cristofori originally named the instrument the clavicembalo col piano e forte, which aptly translates to harpsichord with soft and loud. The name eventually was shortened to pianoforte and later simply piano. Cristofori's pianos soon spread throughout Europe. By the middle of the 18th century, the piano had become the most dominant keyboard instrument in Europe and continued to evolve and improve. One important contributor to the development of the piano was the German instrument maker Johann Andreas Stein. He was able to design a high-quality instrument made of wood that used leather-covered hammers. He passed his knowledge down to his daughter, who also made important contributions to the Viennese version of the piano. These instruments were played by classical music greats such as Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and are part of the reason that we now have such an excellent range of classical-era literature for keyboard. However, these instruments still had less dynamic and sustaining capability than the modern piano. Before we continue to learn about the development of the piano, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. You'll find more exciting videos about classical music's most interesting topics. As music and technology continued to advance, there was an interest in building piano that had more power. In the 1800s, French instrument maker Sébastien Hérault developed a piano that became the new favorite of performers and composers. This new piano featured new mechanisms, such as a double escapement action that allowed for quick repetition of notes, a smoother touch, and greater dynamic range. Hammer covers also transitioned from felt to leather. Pedals began to become an important part of the piano as well. In 1924, Jean-Louis Bassolou invented the sustain pedal, which, unsurprisingly, was intended to sustain the sound. Though pedals later became expressive tools, Their integration into the instrument was originally purely practical. With these improvements, many famous composers wrote music for the piano, including Ludwig van Beethoven, Frédéric Chopin, Franz Liszt, and Robert Schumann. These composers pushed the limits of what was possible on the piano, creating music that was both technically challenging and emotionally expressive. Beethoven, who is perhaps one of the most famous composers and pianists to ever live, was a particular aficionado of the piano. Not only did he create some of the most famous and moving works for the instrument, he also played it so passionately and dramatically that he was once rumored to have broken one in performance. Chopin, a Polish composer famous for his contributions to the piano repertoire, wrote music that was notable for its use of the piano's soft pedal, which allowed the player to create a soft, delicate sound. Chopin also used rubato, a technique where the performer stretches and compresses the tempo to create a more expressive, fluid sound. Franz Liszt, a Hungarian composer and pianist, was famous for his lightning-fast finger work with dramatic showmanship. He also invented the Liszt-Zitian technique, which involved using the fingers of both hands to play rapidly, intricate runs up and down the keyboard. Finally, German composer Robert Schumann explored the expressive capabilities of the instrument by expressing the innermost thoughts and emotions in his music for the instrument. He also helped promote contemporary music of the time, popularizing both the instrument and the brilliant musicians who played it. These composers and their important inventions and ideas helped to shape the romantic style of piano music, and it paved the way for generations of musicians to come. In addition to the musical contributions of individual composers, the piano's design and technology continued to evolve throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. One major innovation was the cast iron frame, which replaced the earlier wooden frames and allowed for a greater tension on the strings. This, in turn, led to a richer, more resonant sound. The overstrung scale was also invented, which arranged the strings in a mere diagonal pattern, allowing for a longer strings and a deeper, more sustained sound. This important intervention was first introduced by American instrument maker Henry Steinway in the middle of the 19th century, and it quickly became standard on all top-quality pianos. The typical modern piano now has 88 keys and spans 7 octaves. But the intervention didn't stop at the modern piano. In the 20th century, musicians became interested in pushing the boundaries for instruments and composition even further. As a result, the electronic piano and the synthesizer were created. The electronic piano, which was developed in the 1950s, uses electronic signals to create sound instead of hammers and strings. Synthesizers, which developed about a decade later, took it up a step further. Then they also used electronic signals that they can create unlimited and unique sounds and textures, sometimes in imitation of other existing instruments or noises. These new instruments allow for even greater flexibility and versatility in creating and performing music. They also allow for greater portability and lower cost, making the piano accessible to more people than ever before. In addition, small portable keyboards have also become popularized, allowing people with limited funds or housing space to own and learn the piano. What was only once an instrument of the wealthy and gifted has now become a greatly enjoyed hobby for many. Despite these new inventions and possibilities, the traditional piano remains an essential instrument in many different genres of music, classical and beyond. It has become a big part of popular music, as well, and is even heavily featured in songs by hugely successful artists such as Queen, Billy Joel, and Journey. Its rich, expressive sound and versatility make it an ideal instrument for solo and ensemble playing, and its history and cultural significance continue to inspire and influence musicians and music lovers all over the world. Music would simply not be the same without it. Thanks for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, please hit like and subscribe for more content like this. See you next time.